All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Apologies for the delay. Microsoft Teams has stymied the best of us from time to time, so I apologize. But now we are ready and we are live. Thank you all for joining us this evening. As we get started, I want to make sure that since we worked through the tech issues, I want to make sure that you can all see and hear us. So you should see a little hand raise icon. If you can hear my voice and if you can see me on your screen, could you please click to raise your hand to make sure that that is true? Thank you, Danny. That is fantastic. Hands going up is a great sign. Awesome. And Bonnie, could you give a quick sound check? And if you can hear Bonnie's voice, same thing. Please raise that hand.
Sure. Good to see you here, Max. Good to see everyone else who's joined the call. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. More hands is always better. Awesome. Cool. So now we're going to dive straight in. Oh, actually, one final thing. I want to make sure you can all see my screen. So if you see Coach Arias from Princeton talking to a student athlete, could you one final time click that hand raise button? Hands up is great. Fantastic. Such a responsive audience. I love that. Wednesday night at 8:30 Eastern, and they are locked in, Bonnie.
I like it. I like to see it.
All right. Fantastic. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Again, thank you for joining us this evening for our webinar, Approaching Your Recruiting Process, featuring me from Headfirst and Bonnie, our friend and colleague from Diamond College Advisory Team. As we head into the presentation, here's a brief overview of what we're going to talk through. We're going to do some brief intros, talk about building a school list, talk about what is unique about defining the high academic recruiting process as we talk and think about it, and then also do a brief overview into intro to coach communication. How can you most effectively start, begin, continue, and finish your coach communication process? First up, some introductions. Bonnie, I'll turn it over to you for your intro.
Sure. Thanks, everybody, for being here tonight and joining us. Bonnie Pettis. I had my start in the high academic space as both a softball player and a basketball player at Yale University. And from there, I went on to my coaching career, started at the University of Connecticut, and at a wonderful time to be around UConn, and then went on to a Division II school at University of Southern Colorado, Pueblo, where we started up a softball program there. They'd never had any softball before. And then that brought me back to the East Coast to Furman University, a small high academic Division I school. And I have to say, softball is something that has brought me around the world for many, many different occasions. And I find it just a special opportunity to work with student athletes who are on that pursuit of taking something that they love, the game that they love, matching it with their thirst and their interest for a great academic experience in the college level, and just sort of see where that ride takes us through our academic advising.
Awesome. Thank you, Bonnie. And thank you for sharing the experience that you have with us this evening. Obviously, having a two-time SoCon Coach of the Year is not every evening that you get that. So thank you for sharing that experience with us tonight. And my name is Max McKenna. Once upon a time, I played my college baseball at Amherst College up here in Massachusetts. I'm now the senior manager of marketing for Headfirst Showcase Camps. After I graduated college in 2011, I went on to teach and coach at the high school level for a few years, first at Phillips Andover Academy, and then at the Master's School, a small private school outside New York City. I joined Headfirst, where I had interned for 2 summers when I was in college. I joined them full-time in 2014, and really since then have been working very closely, particularly with our Showcase division, having conversations like this with families and conversations with college softball and baseball coaches about their recruiting process so that we can continue to deliver some good information into the space. Some of the information in the space is out there and not good, but there is plenty of it. And so we're trying to inject more really good information into the space as well. So thank you all for joining us this evening. Bonnie, you talked about DCAT a little bit. What is DCAT? Give a brief overview of kind of what it is you do working with student athletes in the process.
Sure. So Diamond College Advisory Team is a unique and exclusive opportunity that I've been doing for, I want to say this is my 9th or 10th summer, in working with student athletes and their families in the softball space, specifically students who are looking, as I mentioned before, to gain entrance and to marry that opportunity of softball and a great academic experience. So where we start is we are at the Headfirst events, and we help evaluate anybody and everybody who is at camp. That's part of us being at Headfirst, is we do offer evaluation opportunities there. And so that's the basis of how I advise student athletes. We help, as we are talks further on into the evening, into our session, I help students identify what are good fits and what are good matches for them, what are good reaches for them. And really the basis of that is coming from my 30 something years being around college softball and being around the college environment, is giving you, the student athletes and parents, a realistic third party analysis of where you are, and then maybe where, if you're trying to get to certain levels, what those gaps are, how we get there, and how we reasonably can take control of the process for yourself, how you can be in control of how you go about spending your time and your energy, really being able to look at places that are in your wheelhouse and giving you some really great opportunities from that.
That is all so important. And I think that there's a few things here that we absolutely will talk in much more detail that are a really key piece of what it is you do working with student athletes, Bonnie, and what it is that DCAT does. So first and foremost, you mentioned, marrying the softball and the academics at the next level. So the first thing up here is identifying target schools. When we talk about building out a school list, when I talk with student athletes and families about this, we say, hey, what are your list of schools? And because of the way we phrase that, because of the way we talk about it, the most natural place for a lot of student athletes to start is, I'm going to start listing the names of colleges, which is a totally natural thing. But what I would like to talk through tonight is kind of decentering the name of the school and recentering, in a Copernican shift almost, some of the other aspects, right? So I think about the school qualities being a much more important factor than the name of the school. The school qualities being a more important factor in finding the right fit for you than league or conference or what division are they playing in. Because one of the things that we hear quite a bit, I hear this from student athletes every year, almost every day, is I'm interested in Ivy League schools. That's great. There's a bunch of wonderful schools that happen to be united under the Ivy League umbrella. But the experience at Columbia, a school in Manhattan with 6,300 undergrads, is very different than the college experience at Dartmouth in rural New Hampshire with 4,000 undergrads. Or I'm interested in NESCAC schools. Great. Again, a lot of wonderful schools. The experience at Tufts, right down the road from me here in Somerville and Medford, right outside Boston, with 6,000 undergrad students, is very, very different than a rural experience with 2,000 undergrads at Williams, or even a small college town 1,800 student experience at Amherst, where I went. They're very, very different experiences. So when we talk about finding the right fit, what I want to center is, how do I, as a student athlete, how do I work with student athletes to find the right holistic fit? And this comes down to a lot more so than the name on the plaque at the front of the school. Is much more around, what are the qualities of that school? How big is it? Where is it? How close to a city is it? How far outside of a city is it? Is it rural? Is it urban? Is it close to home? Is it far away from home? Is it an engineering school? Is it a liberal arts school? These pieces, the qualities that make up the school, are going to be much more informative of the experience that you have there, as opposed to just the name on the beautiful gate at the front of campus. So when we talk about building out a school list, I like to start with, what are the qualities that you're looking for in your college experience? What's the experience you're looking for? And then match that back to say, all right, these schools are the right size, in the right area, have the right academic focus, and they're close enough to home, or, sorry, mom and dad, far enough away from home to make their way onto my list. Bonnie, anything there in terms of thoughts on those qualities, or how you start building a list with your advisees?
Sure. You gave a great overview in terms of showing that there's actually a wide variety when you say the Ivies or the NESCACs or anywhere, east of the Mississippi, some things like that. So we really start diving into what are some of the academic interests that the students might have in terms of any specific major, or if they don't have a major, sort of an area of interest, and building from that. sort of giving yourself the best opportunities or a wide variety of opportunities, a type of school. We also look at really kind of the three areas that I talk about are looking for school that's an academic fit, that is an athletic fit, and then that is also a social fit. And for some folks that can help those pieces all together, right, are all very important ingredients. Some folks love the big city, as you say, Manhattan, downtown Boston, downtown Washington, D.C. They love the energy of all of that kind of place and they want to be in the mix. And others would rather be in a more rural setting. So we really start dividing out, sort of getting a feel for some of those things. And the way that people come about understanding what they like about those things is really when you go and visit. And a way to do that is maybe when you're out at some tournaments, go, ahead of time, look and see what colleges are nearby. Where can you just run through a campus and really start to get a feel when do you want to get out of the car and go walk around campus? Or is it something like, wow, this is really not comfortable for me. So I really talk about also trusting your gut, when you're looking at those different types of schools. But I think, again, it's going back to even the beginning of this, of getting a good evaluation of where might I fit with softball, where might I be challenged, and then how do I balance those pieces of the academics at the same time as we develop that list, that's a softball fits, softball reaches, academic fits, academic reaches.
Yeah, and I apologize for any background noise on my end. That is such an important piece, and I think that one area where I think it's tougher for student athletes is you can go on niche.com or you can go on US News and World Reports and enter your SAT score and or go to Princeton Review, and you get a sense of, am I within the range of the academic piece for many of these schools, right? It's a lot harder on the softball side. And Bonnie, one thing that you mentioned is like getting that independent kind of third party evaluation. Where do I fit in? And that's such an important piece of the puzzle that a lot of student athletes don't necessarily have access to that as a resource. Is someone with experience who has seen a lot of different levels of college softball being able to say, here's where I think you are, here's where I think you could head, and start to build that list around those pieces of the puzzle, right? Start to get a sense of, here's where I fit in the college softball landscape. And that piece is really challenging. It's one of the main questions we get from families is like, they come in blind, they're like, I know I'm a really good student because I have the data and the numbers, and there's this wide body of data on the internet to say, here are the schools that kind of line up with my academics. The softball side it's a lot harder. There's a lot more questions, a lot more kind of nebulous, where do I fit type feeling there. Anything on that front that you would kind of add there, or comfort or not families on that?
Sure. Again, I think what I hear is a similar common refrain of, I think I can play at such and such level. I might ask, have you seen any of those games on television or on streaming? Have you had the opportunity, possibly, if you live in an area where those schools, have you been to a college softball game in person? Division 1, 2, 3, whatever it may be, and take a look at the size, the strength, the speed of the athletes on the field, and where do you fit? Of course, you're not yet a college player, so you're not going to be, not expected to be at those sort of metrics. However, are you on track? Are you being in the chute to be able to sort of aspire to that? And sometimes I think some folks, that's a good eye opener for them to see, just in person or really watching online, how fast the game moves and how everyone, hitters 1 through 9 are contributing. So those are some pieces. How do I stack up that way athletically? And again, that's, a number may give you a certain piece, but it's also something like, is the coach recruiting for your position that year? Like, so there's a lot of different layers that go into this of determining what a fit may be. But again, having done this for about 10 years now and having placed players at a variety of levels, I have a really good handle on what that athletic makeup is that will put you in the conversation or get you in the conversation. Doesn't mean it's going to guarantee that you'll get responses or yeses from all your top folks, but it will say, yes, based on my experience, you have the criteria and the skills at this point, or you're not far from having those skills. So yes, let's pursue this particular school. Or, hey, there's a gap. I'm going to tell you straight away, there's a gap. And the gap is maybe really too big for you to jump to Oklahoma or Florida or wherever, right? We can make that exaggeration. And so being able to, for me to be able to lay that out and say, I think that here's where you are, here's where you fit, helps you know exactly, to have your head on straight about really where should we be looking, where are good matches. And then that sort of sets the table for one of the things that I like to talk about, which is recruiting yourself to the schools of your choice that are fits. Where am I in that range of I'm close to or on track to be a softball fit, and I'm close to or on track of being an academic fit, which gets you and keeps you in the conversation.
Yeah. I think that is so important. That kind of reach, like those things are the way that you're so thoughtful about working with your advisees on that, I think is really interesting and really illustrative of how more people should kind of approach the process. One other thing that you said there that I do think is really interesting is watching softball, right? I mean, and it sounds kind of obvious once you say it, but watching as much college softball at a variety of different levels will help you. And I think that is something that when I was going through this process, even when I was going through this process, a number of years ago at this point, but Division III schools weren't streaming. So the college baseball that I got to watch was the College World Series. Now, I was a 5'10" righty throwing 80 miles an hour. I was not going to a College World Series type program. So I didn't really have a sense of what does college baseball look like at the other levels. I do think there's a little bit of a golden age now where you can watch college softball at all these different levels online, on TV. There's more and more streaming options. One thing I will say, because I was talking with the Wesleyan baseball coach, the Wesleyan head baseball coach has a daughter who is now came through our camps, is now playing at UMass for softball. She's a great, great player. He said there was a different thing between watching a game on streaming versus watching a game in person, because the game, the velocity of the game, the pace of the game is different in person. So yes, watch as many streaming games as you can at schools you're interested in. And if you can, get on campus and watch some college softball at schools that are local to you. Watch it in person so you can really get a sense of, oh, this is a much more immersive experience. This is what the game looks like at the next level. And I think that can really help you start to level set where you might fit. Mm-hmm. The other two pieces that I like to talk about in terms of assessing where you might fit in the softball landscape is learning from every showcase and tournament, and also learning from every coach conversation. As you go to tournaments this summer, as you attend a Headfirst event, as you go to showcases and prospect camps, and you're playing all over the country at Zoom in a June and the Sparkler and all these different things, do an honest self-evaluation and have some candid conversations with yourself and with your coaches about where you might fit, right? If you're watching a shortstop across the field and you're saying, great, that's a 2026 shortstop who's committed to Florida. Okay, she's better than me. Okay, that starts to give you a sense, right? Or that there's a center fielder who's committed to Lafayette and I see how fast she is, or whatever the case may be. You can start to kind of compare yourself to the field and compare yourself if you know where they're committed, or if you know kind of what they're doing in their process. It certainly helps, whether it's teammates or folks that you're playing against, where you can say, okay, I stack up against the competition in 1, 2, and 3 kind of ways, and that helps me inform where I maybe should be looking. The other piece is ultimately the arbiter at who can play softball at any college program is the coach of that program. So the most important source of truth for this is going to be the college coach. Eventually, you're going to have conversations with the coaches at your programs and say, hey, coach, I'm really interested in Amherst. Are you interested in me? And you can learn from every single one of those conversations. Now, sometimes you're going to say, I'm really interested in your school. Do you like me? And the answer is going to be yes. And that's great. That's wonderful. That's exciting. That's awesome. You're going to get a yes at some point. There also might be a no, or there might be a maybe. These answers are more frustrating. They might hurt. They're not fun. It's never fun to hear a no, but it's still super important to learn from that no so that you can set your next steps, right? There are different kinds of no's. There's, you know what, I like you as a kid, but I don't think that you project at our level of college softball. That's different than I think you can play at our level of college softball, but you need to improve on X, Y, or Z. Or I think you could play at our program, but right now I'm not recruiting catchers, or whatever the case may be. All three of those are a no from a school. And so it's not going to be super fun. It's going to hurt when you hear that no, but you can learn different things from each of them. And ultimately, each of these conversations presents a fork in the road where if it's a no, you can still advance and say, okay, how does this conversation, how does this no, how does what I learned from it help me assess where do I need to go next? And that is such an important piece, is getting to a yes, no, or maybe helps you determine what is the next step in the path. And so I always encourage folks to learn from those conversations, especially because even if they're painful, they can be super helpful in helping you decide, okay, what do I need to do next to find the right fit for me? Next, we're going to talk through what is unique about the high academic process. And there's plenty of things. This is ultimately what more or less what is unique about the high academic recruiting process is what keeps Bonnie and I both employed on this. So there's a lot of ground to cover here, but I think that a few things to kind of to highlight here that I would say is when we talk about high academic recruiting, I know I've brought up NESCAC schools and I've brought up Ivy League schools. When we say high academic recruiting, I do not mean just the NESCAC or just the Ivy League or just the Patriot League or just the U.S. News and World Report's top 25, 50, 100 colleges and universities. When we talk about the high academic recruiting process, and Bonnie phrased this earlier, we mean you are putting the side-by-side goals of athletics and academics and maximizing overall school fit, using the two pieces of this puzzle, academics and athletics, to maximize your holistic overall school fit. That is the win that we would define in high academic recruiting. Most of this happens with the schools we work with, that most of them are also selective admissions schools. There's roughly 100, 125 schools in the country that are with admissions rates below 20%. Those are also selective admissions schools, but that is not necessarily what we mean. One of the things that is unique about the high academic recruiting process is it does require targeted exposure. The same opportunities that can get you recruited by Oklahoma and Florida might not be able to get you recruited by Harvard or Pomona or Macalester. Part of that is the fact that those coaching staffs don't have the same recruiting budget or the same coaching staffs that they do at these Power 4 type programs. So if you're pursuing this where you're trying to max out academics and athletics both side by side, you're going to need to pursue at a certain point different types of exposure than some of your teammates who are only thinking about the softball at the next level. Bonnie, would love to have you kind of chime in here with any thoughts on what's unique or what's different or how you talk about this with your advisees certainly as well.
Sure. As I kind of bringing back a phrase that I mentioned before is getting into that mindset of recruiting yourself to the schools of choice. And that means getting, if the coaches are searching for needles in a haystack in terms of great players who are highly qualified, highly motivated academically, and are the positions and speed and so on and so forth that they're looking for. If they're looking for needles in haystacks, then we got to get the haystacks and the needles together.
You got to get the magnet. You got to bring the magnet.
Yes, you do. You do. And that is, Max has not asked me to say this, but it is what I love about the Headfirst events, right? Because you as players and parents, you're self-selecting to say, this is the route I want to go. So you're getting access to all of these kind of coaches and exposure all in, one shot within 36 hours, 48 hours, so on. You're going to have exposure to a lot of coaches. Some players and families ask me, well, do we have to go to the big tournaments and where should we go? And you go where your team is playing. You also will be bringing yourself to these campuses, one, to learn more about them, to see what it's like to be on a New England campus in the middle of February. You need to check that out. And, also it shows, hey, I am learning about this. I am interested in learning about your school and really getting, that whole feel. So that's another aspect of what makes it unique, is that it's not the scatter shot of, okay, I'm going to email 75 schools a week and see what hits. Some folks will need to take, or their situation is such that they're going to take whatever the first or a scholarship offer that comes up. The high academic has its own pace and its own timeline, a little bit different, which we'll dive into, but it's also a lot more concentrated in terms of your efforts and your energy. You're not going to be, contacting and splattering everybody in the world to try to see what hits. We're going to be a lot more, precise and fine-tuned with the way we approach these different schools. And again, bringing yourself to them, depending on your geography, where you live, there are different ways to achieve that. But it will be, again, you've got to get to where they are. And there are some unique ways or other ways to find out how to make that match to get you and that coach in the same space.
I think that's so important. And I always love the way you talk about recruiting yourself to these programs, because I think that we talk about recruiting too much in the passive voice, where it's like, I want to be recruited. I want to get recruited. I want to be seen. That is all well and good, but ultimately, especially if you're targeting these sorts of programs, you have to put yourself in the active voice. You need to be proactive in going out and recruiting yourself to these programs, chasing the opportunities that put you in front of the right schools or the right fit, being very intentional and very targeted, as opposed to, well, if I go to this tournament, I hope that I get seen, right? No, how do you put yourself actively in front of the coaches that you want to recruit yourself to, right? That piece is so important. I think sometimes overlooked. I don't want players to be found in the recruiting process. I want them to use the recruiting process to find themselves and actively find their fit at the college level. I think that's the key, right?
Yes.
Bonnie, you mentioned timeline. What a great segue. So could you talk a little bit about the high academic, timeline and what that looks like and how it's different from the Oklahomas and Floridas of the world?
Sure. Well, as you've got here on the slide, the high academic slowdown. What this means is that your journey, right, through this process as a student athlete, and you as parents and supporters of the kids that are out there, it works on a longer and slower time frame. So it's just something that has to take much more time, right, than the Power Four conferences or some of the other D1 scholarship conferences. And what that means is coaches will be evaluating you throughout junior year. So this slowdown, it really has a big focus on your academics. As a student athlete, you've got to be able to present your best 3 years, freshman, sophomore, junior year, your best 3 years transcript, your best testing scores. And again, those are not really, you're not going to be doing standardized testing in sophomore year necessarily, or have your best scores at that point. They're going throughout junior year, which is really different than, again, another school where, quote, Division I, when they can start talking to juniors on September 1 of junior year, and offers might be going out in September and in October, and, they're done. Well, that's not the case in the high academic space. There's so much more to go. I've had some coaches say, hey, it's great that I can fall in love with your skills as a ball player, but I've got to fall in love with your transcript first. And that just takes time for you to develop that. So that's really probably, one of the main pieces of that. And then secondarily, as you've mentioned here, like your academic credentials is what's going to get the door open and keep the doors open, as many doors open for you as possible. And that comes from taking a continually more challenging course load from year to year. Does that mean you have to take 7 APs? No, it doesn't mean that. It means just being progressively more challenged, as well as good results, good outcome there. Yes, testing comes into play. That could be its own other session for an entire hour, but because places have been test optional, don't take that to mean that you can't take or you don't have to take tests. In the academic space, it's still to your advantage to take them and do the best that you can with that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And where I think high academic student athletes or players who are targeting these sorts of schools, where I think they start to feel some anxiety, and is totally natural to feel, is like, well, I saw my teammate commit over there and another teammate on Twitter commit over there, and everyone's committing. What about me? But the reality, as you said, is that these schools need more academic information. If you're Coach Gabriel at McAllister and you walk over to your admissions with a ninth grade transcript, that's all well and good, but there's not a whole lot that they're going to be able to do. They're going to say, great, bring it back to me in 2 years, right? And that's the reality at most of these schools, is they just need more depth before they're able to say, like, yes, you are part of my recruiting class, because you need to make it through the admissions process in a little bit different way. Now, that being said, this third bullet here is how important athletics can be in the admissions process. At some of these schools with admissions rates between 5 and 20%, it's a very small eye of the needle to get through for anybody who's applying off the street. One of the goals of the high academic recruiting process is to leverage your softball skills to become more of a sure thing in admissions. You have to have a good transcript. You have to have the right test scores. You have to have the right character. You have to be a fit. But if you have all those things, if you check those boxes and you also get the interest from the college coach at that program, they're going to be able to get you through admissions in a way that a typical person applying doesn't necessarily have, right? That same access, that same support through admissions. So it does vary from school to school how much coaches are able to give you in terms of that support, but that really is the win, is you are fighting to get through admissions at a very competitive school and leveraging softball to help you do that, right? To create a supporter on the inside of the administration to put your file in the right hands, to say, Bonnie Pettis, this is one of my recruits. This is the person. She's a good fit. She's a good character. She's a good kid. She's a good player. She checks all the academic boxes. We're going to let her in. And then your admissions rate goes from 5% to 95%, right? And that's one of the key wins in the process. Intro to coach communication. I know that we got started a few minutes late. We'll keep rolling here for a few minutes after as well. But we also will cover intro to coach communication in a lot more detail later on in part 2 of this webinar series as well. But would love to kind of talk through at a high level some of the key pieces. One is you have to personalize every touch point that you have with a college coach. And this means more than just inserting the right name of the right coach at the right school. That is important. And that's where this second bullet, proofread, comes in. You want to make sure that if you're emailing Coach Jenny Rohn at Harvard, it says Coach Jenny Rohn, it says Harvard, it says Crimson, it has the right email address, and it doesn't all of a sudden say Dartmouth and Big Green, right? You don't want to create those typos. But also it means more than that. It means that you want to give personal information and personal details about why you are interested in that program. To Bonnie's point, recruit yourself to that program. You don't want to just say, hey, coach, dear coach, I'm really interested in Harvard because it's a great school. That is true. That is also true of every college that you'll be emailing with, right? So you want to make sure that you're able to insert something that says, I am interested in your school because of 1, 2, 3 specific things that call to me personally. This is why I'm emailing you, is because I am very interested in your school. I've done some research about your school, and I know that it could be the right fit for me because of these sorts of reasons, not just it's a great school. So personalize every touch point. There's a great chance that if you aren't hearing back from college coaches, one of the main reasons that college coaches don't reply to emails from my conversations that I've had with them is that they aren't personal enough. They play as generic. They think, well, this kid emailed 45 coaches today and I happen to be one of them, as opposed to this player emailed me because they are highly interested in my program and I think it could be the right fit. As I mentioned, email it will kind of be the backbone of most of your coach communication because it's so accessible. Coaches' email addresses can be found on their athletics websites. It will be an important piece of the puzzle, and inboxes are incredibly crowded especially for college coaches at these sorts of programs that have a lot of student athletes who are interested in going there. So what you want to do to make sure you stand out is personalize, as I talked about. And also you want to organize and present your information in a way that highlights your strengths. And you want to give coaches all the information that they need to have to further the conversation. It means including some video links. It means including your Twitter profile. It means including your sports recruits profile. It means, including your transcript and your test scores, all the things that they need, you want to send to them. One thing that I also suggest generally is, instead of starting a new email thread every time you email a coach, reply to the same thread so that they can scroll back and say, who is this Max McKenna fellow? And you're like, oh, right. There's the email that they sent me 2 months ago. There's the email they sent me a month ago. And if I have questions or if I want to see older video, it's all in one place for them to live there as well. So give them the right information, present it effectively, and personalize that information so that you can stand out in crowded inboxes. And then, Bonnie, you want to talk through, email's a really important piece. If you think 80-20, it's going to be 80% of your outreach. But what's the other 20%? How else can student athletes stand out?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned in the slide here, you can use, I think, social media as an additional part. It's not, again, not the main part, but it is an additional way to send updated video. I mean, everybody loves it. Everybody loves a little video. Everybody loves to click on something. So being able to have some updated reels, perhaps once a month or so, particularly when you're getting into high school season and summer season, and you've got, okay, you're going to have some content to show, all right, I hit some dingers, I hit some doubles, I had a great weekend. You can put those into your social. And I think it's easy to find where all these schools are. You can just follow them. Certainly, I would also recommend that if you're going to use social media, have a softball only account. Keep your personal stuff, personal. Just use this one. That's all that coaches are going to see, because, believe it or not, everybody's going to look through there. I was recently joining a particular academic program, and we got there and they said, for all of you, clean up your social media, because employers do look at that. Make sure your social media is going to be acceptable to anyone and everyone. I would speak the same for softball. So it's a great way to add some. Just again, I just keep saying, we're going to feed them Max McKenna on the brain. We're just going to keep showing them. They're going to see his emails, what he talked about, what he's doing personally. Oh, here's that Max kid again. They're just, the more times, the more hits that you can get within reason, right? Not just slamming people, but I think frequency is as important as, volume, right? We don't have to just keep mass, but we want to do it at a little bit different pace. And then, of course, mixing it up. Yes, send a handwritten letter. Send something. My goodness, that shows that you got a postcard or a piece of paper and an envelope, and you had to find the address and you had to find a stamp. I don't even know what those cost anymore, but right, you had to stick a stamp on there and send it. Something personalized. It's great also when you have been, at a camp. That's a great way to be able to do that, or at a particular tournament. I think that's something that's going to help out. And then again, at the tournaments, when you have, or a showcase, you have the opportunity, just be ready to introduce yourself. I do know that it can be a little bit sort of nerve-wracking for some people sometimes. Coaches know that and they understand that, but they certainly appreciate the effort that you're putting in to be able to just go up and make the most of that FaceTime. You flew all the way across the country, or they flew all the way across the country. Make the most of that to simply just make that connection on a personal level.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with everything you just said. One thing I do want to highlight, because I think that some players do lose track of the social media side of things. Two things. One is, yes, have a softball only account, because, and that's not because like you're going to be doing things that are nefarious on your personal account that you want to hide from coaches. But the point is, you want to have it be a softball only feed, because that's what the coaches are interested in seeing, right? You don't want to have it cluttered up with, oh, like this other thing that happened. I was hanging out with my friends and I was doing X, Y, or Z. That's not going to matter as much to college coaches. So if you keep if you have a softball only profile, then they can go to that profile and just scroll through the videos, the stats, the things that they need to see from a softball perspective. Also, one thing, and this is something that had not occurred to me until I talked to some college coaches about it, but one interesting thing is, you do want to pump up your teammates, but you don't want your feed to be made up entirely or mostly or even predominantly of retweets of your friends' successes, your teammates' successes. You want to do that from time to time, but you really want to keep your feed dedicated to your video, your content, your information, so that coaches know that what they're looking at is you. So that's the other piece of it is, feel free to reply and congratulate your teammate on their tweet, but stay away from having your feed. If someone goes to your profile and all they see is retweets of your teammates, coaches won't necessarily gain anything from that in terms of their ability to recruit you, which is something that hadn't occurred to me until I talked to the college coach about it last summer.
Thanks.
We are now headed into the Q&A. So we're going to take probably 5 or 10 minutes or so with the Q&A. To ask a question, you should see across the top of your Microsoft Teams toolbar a little thing that says Q&A. Feel free to start firing questions in there. We also collected questions as part of the registration, the sign up to join. So I have a few there as well, but start to fire questions away. I'll start to compile them. Bonnie, as I do that, do you want to talk through, you mentioned this briefly earlier, but do you want to talk through the video eval offer and tell folks how to do that, what it should include, that sort of stuff?
Sure. So for coming and joining us this evening, what we are offering is that you can send me some video clips, offense and defense, pitching if you're a pitcher, and we can set up a time to do a short, over the phone evaluation. Again, no obligation, no charge, no anything, so that I can just sort of give you some quick feedback on what I see, what some of your goals may be, being able to just have that verbal follow-up with your parents and or you to discuss what your projectability, right, may be at that college level based on a little bit of what we've seen. And you can do that by sending your information and sending those clips to dcatsoftball@gmail. And if you do this by May 1st, I would love to be able to get to, if you can, hit that deadline, and then that will give me some time between now and shortly after that time to be able to set up a call with anyone who might be interested in it.
Awesome. Thank you, Bonnie. And again, I would strongly recommend that that anybody who's able to take advantage of that, because that getting a starting point for what are the schools that should make their way onto my list can really help you set the table for where you can be most efficient over the summer, right? Right now you're playing your season, but so are college coaches. So it's not big on recruiting right now, but come June, July, August, those are going to be really important months to advance your recruiting. So having a sense of where do I fit into this landscape so that I can be efficient with my time is going to really help set you up for success heading into the summer. So that's my little final plug for that. Bonnie, we got, and we talked about timeline, but I think that there were a few questions that came in before as part of the registration, timelines for early admission. I'm curious about the recruiting timeline. When can colleges officially contact student athletes? So I think that in terms of, I'm going to kind of separate these out. We talked about the recruiting timeline and how it's different for high academic schools. If you see a coach, one piece of the timeline is, okay, what are the next steps, right? When are they recruiting and what are they going to ask for? So with your advisees and college coaches that you've talked with over the summer, with 2026s, with 2027s, what are they looking to do with these grad years in terms of the timeline and the next steps coming out of something like a Headfirst showcase or if they see you at the Sparkler?
Sure. So for class of 26, they've been contacting coaches throughout their junior year, sending updates. As you get into pre-summer, when you know what your schedule is, send it to hey coach, I play for such and such team. Here's my tournament schedule, my showcase schedule. Love to see you at these events. And what coaches will often say too is, hey, we've seen you last summer. We saw you the fall. We saw you at our winter camp. We want to see you live. They want to see you one more year older, one more year stronger, and playing against others who have also matured. They want to get another look at you, seeing you live somewhere, somehow, whatever that may be. But that is certainly the common refrain that I see from coaches is, we've tracked you, we really like you. But what the honest thing is, we're tracking 5 shortstops and 5 outfielders and 5 first basemen. And then we're sort of sorting through, our own needs for that. So that is one of those kind of the remaining exposure points that you can get with coaches. So be ready to take advantage of that for class of 26. Coaches will be in this high academic space submitting their top candidates to their admissions department right in July for something called a academic pre-read. These are not unlimited. Coaches are using these for their top prospects to get a handle from the admissions. Like, we, based on our experience as a coach, everyone who's been through our system previously, we think this candidate lines up very, very well. Are they someone that you believe is admissible? From there, the answers that the coaches get, that's when they will then be able to put their offers of admission support out to different players. Everybody wants to know when that happens and are they on track for getting that? And so those can happen potentially as early as late July, but offers and pre-reads, they go on through August into September of senior year, into October. I've had players not make their final commitments until senior year, October or even November. So there is this long time. Certainly, kind of just to back one more piece on that is, and the coaches in this space are spending a lot of energy, probably the majority of their energy, trying to get their academic class for and through early admissions, early decision. And so early decision means that in November of senior year, you've decided, this is my number one school, this is where I want to go. Coach has made me an offer. So that's the target that coaches are looking for, is to recruit as many of their top athletes for early decision. Coaches may also have a lot of their academic capital to spend in early decision. Those are, again, kind of really nuanced and layered pieces of this. So that's what 26s are doing. 27s are continuing to build a foundation. It doesn't mean that they're not looking at you, because right they're funneling down their class of 26. They're in the bottom of the funnel right this summer for class of 26, and they're going to be at the top of the funnel for class of 27. They're gathering data and data points and contacts and how they meet you. So 27s, you are equally as active in terms of saying, here's my schedule, contacting them via email prior to showcases. If you're on social media, you'll even see some teams or some programs that have a Google form. Fill out what tournament are you going to be at Sparkler. Put your name in there. So if they're asking you for it and they're making it really easy, go ahead and just, join the party in there. Go ahead and put yourself in that location. 26s, again, you are funneling down this summer. You will be reaching a point where you've got to say, okay, I've sent all my information. Maybe we've talked. Maybe I've been at your camp. We've had a variety of exposure points. At some point, you will be saying, as Max mentioned earlier, I love this school. I like the feel. I might be a fit. Do you think I'm a fit? That's where you get your answers and so on. Class of 27, it's not time to do that just yet. They don't have data points for you. You don't have 3 years of a transcript. However, you're building that reputation, you're building that foundation and that relationship for you to get to know coaches. So really your job as a 27 this summer is to continue to up your skills, up your competition level, and really work on your academic foundation.
Yeah, I love what you said just there, because I think that like the one question we get, which is related to all of these, is like, I'm a rising senior, is it too late? Or I'm a rising junior, is it too early? And the answer to both is no, but what that looks like is different, right? For 2026, as you said, these coaches are looking to assess you, evaluate you, work next steps, sometimes pretty quickly, and commit their 2026 class, commit their senior class, or the rising senior class. That does not mean that 27s, it's too early for you. It just means that what you get coming out of this is a little bit different. You're being proactive, you're getting on the radars. It's giving you the chance, as you said, Bonnie, to build the relationship with these coaches, which is a crucial piece of the recruiting process. It's more than just, are they a fit on the field and a fit in the academically? It's also, are they a fit culturally for my program? Are they the sort of player that I want in the locker room, on the bus? Are they going to be a leader in my program? And so the more chances you have to be able to build relationships with college coaches certainly helps that. One thing, and kind of part B of this question that came in again before the as part of the registration, was, when should athletes start attending camps, and how do you choose the right ones? The one thing that I've been saying recently is, because we get this question quite a bit, when should I start getting exposure. I always say that I don't want student athletes to sacrifice player development on the altar of getting early exposure. The
Mm-hmm.
best thing that you can do to advance your recruiting process is to be the best softball player that you can be and the best student that you can be. So you don't want to way before way before it will be effective. You don't want to necessarily be only chasing exposure tournament, exposure showcase, get on campus. You want to make sure that you're continuing to get better. And so you want to make sure that you're balancing those two things, especially as a 2027 or a 2028. You want to make sure that I'm getting better this summer. And also I'm starting to get some proactive, get in front of coaches that I'm targeting. For 2026, it's obviously a key time for you to get in front of these coaches. And so the exposure takes more center stage. But if you're 27 or 28 or even a 29, you can mix in some exposure, but don't let that get in the way of continuing to get better at the game of softball as well. Because that's a really, really key piece is you want to, every time you see a coach, you want to show improvement, right? You want to show your development and that you're continuing to level up your game. A question that came in live here that I really love is I'm a 2027 with an SAT score that's pretty good. Should we share that with coaches to show that she's close, or should we wait for a higher score after more classes, more studying, et cetera? And part B is what do these sorts of schools expect on SAT or standardized test scores for softball players compared to the average admission stats that you can find on niche.com?
Mm-hmm. Good questions. I like
It
it.
is. It's a good one.
Yeah, very, very good. My gut response to the have a good score in sophomore year before junior year, I would say go ahead and share it because it shows your capabilities and your potential, right? If you've already scored well and well for quote your grade or exceeding, high percentile in your grade, I think that shows a really good, promising trajectory. So I think you should absolutely share it. And actually, this goes way back. The Ivy coaches and NESCAC coaches and coaches have always told us, test early and test often. They are not expecting you to get the be all end all on any one test. It usually takes multiple, sittings to get your best combination of efforts. Math is a huge part in here, right? Math is half the battle on the SAT. And if you're appropriately where you need to be in sophomore math, there's things that you can't know yet. You don't know yet. You haven't had it. And that's totally okay. So if you've done well, congrats to you. Go ahead and send that out there. Let coaches know. If you haven't done it yet, that's okay too. We're not expecting it.
Yeah.
My one quick thing I'll add to that too is we typically recommend to folks that once you start junior year to get a score of some kind in the books by the end by December of junior year, right? So that you can see where you're tracking and coaches can see where you're tracking. Tee up the other pieces, part B on that.
Yeah. Well, one quick addition that I would just make there as well is like the other benefit of taking standardized testing early and getting it in, like, great. If you have a great score, great, send it away. Getting a test early, there's different tests you can take, right? You can take the SAT, you can take the ACT, and one of them might suit your strengths more. So if you're able to take one of them earlier and get a sense of like, okay, that aligned with what's going to suit me, great. I'm going to run full speed at prepping for the SAT. Or, you know what, I want to kind of see what might be different about the ACT. That's the other kind of piece of the puzzle is if you create some time for yourself to lean into your strengths. The second part of the question is, basically how much support do coaches have to give? What do schools expect on standardized tests for softball players compared to the average publicly shared stats on their admissions?
It is, again, nuanced in every school and every different level, but certainly I think a general theory that can be applied here is that softball coaches are looking to hit a certain average within their team, within whatever their school and their department determines what they need to be targeting. And so that may mean that their scores, I'm just going to throw these are not hard and fast, they're hypotheticals, a 1300 up to 15 60 or something of that nature. So there's going to be an average, which may mean for you as someone who high GPA, higher score, maybe not as high need on the athletic side. Well, you're going to help balance out that other person who touches the ball a lot more, maybe hits more bombs, and is not scoring in the 1500s. So, right, there's a need and a scale for everybody. How does that compare to what's in niche? In my experience, athletics is held to a similar standard. It's not like, okay, athletics in the NESCAC can do something different than the regular student body. That's not the case at all, right? In fact, it's probably even a tighter, more narrow band that those coaches are working with. So it's still very much, I would say, those reportings that you're seeing are going to be in that same neighborhood that coaches are going to be what they're going to be looking for.
Yeah, it's certainly within a range. Different schools at the same level have different levels of support from what I've seen as well. Like McAllister might have totally different or different support that they're able to offer than Carleton or then St. Olaf or then Amherst, like other high academic Division III programs. They might look slightly different in terms of what they can do. The other thing is, as you work, as a general rule, as you work up the ladder from, Division III, Division I, high level Division I, those coaches have more and more support to give, because if you're a coach at Amherst, great, you're playing a NESCAC schedule. If you're a coach at Harvard or Princeton, you're playing a Division I schedule. So the Ivy gets an auto bid to the College World Series. Great. They need to be competitive when they get there. So you still need to be roughly in line with the admitted student body, but they have a little bit more leeway to give than a Division III program. Again, as a general rule. But typically it's pretty tight. It's within a standard deviation, really, of most of the things that I've talked about. There's a great book about the recruiting process called Playing the Game that covers Ivy and NESCAC recruiting in particular. And they talk through a lot of this stuff where it's, balancing the class and the role of the academic index and how far are you going down to academically down to get some of these players that are going to commit. But it's a sliding scale, because it also depends on how much coaches are interested in you as a player. Are they willing to take a player whose test score they're going to need to balance out? They like them enough as a softball player to say, great, your test score is within range, but I know that I'm going to need to find someone who has a test score to balance yours out because I like you that much as a player. So it is kind of a sliding scale between those things as well. I want to be as respectful as I can with everyone's time, since we are already over. So I know that there's a few more questions that came in earlier and a few more questions that have come in live as well. Certainly not your first, last, or only opportunity to get your questions answered. So please feel free to reach out to Bonnie or myself at any point. You can email Headfirst at showcase@headfirst.com. You give us a call. Certainly feel free to visit our website. I would love for you all to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, where we're pretty active and where we'll be posting clips of this webinar and to notify you all of when we have this posted. We've been recording this. We'll be posting it on YouTube. We'll be sending it out via email. Certainly feel free. Take advantage of Bonnie's offer for the video eval. Send that to dcatsoftball@gmail.com. You can learn more about DCAT in general at diamondcollegeadvisory.com. And one final plug, this was part 1, as I mentioned. Part 2 on Wednesday, April 30th. We will be doing a part 2, the do's and don'ts of recruiting, where we'll dive in on a few other topics in a little bit more detail on coach communication, getting the right exposure, those sorts of things. So we'd love to see you all there. At the end of this week, we'll be sending out an email with the recording of this webinar, as well as a link to register for that one as well. So thank you all so much for attending the webinar, for taking some time out of your Wednesday evening. We really appreciate it, and you will certainly be hearing from us. But if you have anything in the meantime, certainly feel free to reach out to us proactively as well. Thank you all for taking the time.